Welcome to ATCM, the Emergency Medicine channel. Today we'll be discussing a pediatric case that presented to our ER with complaints of left elbow pain. Can we begin, sir? A 6-year-old child presented to our ER with complaints of pain over the left elbow after falling on an outstretched arm. Now, in our initial 10-second assessment, since the patient was conscious and oriented and seemed like an isolated injury, we quickly moved on to the primary survey where patient's airway appeared patent since there was no evidence of any obvious anatomical distortion. Now, in breathing wise, patient had a respiratory rate of 21 cycles per minute, maintaining saturation of 99% in room air. Circulation wise, patient had a heart rate of 108 beats per minute, which was regular in rhythm, and blood pressure was 106 per 64 millimeter mercury. And examination wise, peripheral pulses, right artery, radial and brachial artery appeared to be more feeble than comparison to the right arm. Now, disability wise, patient had a full GCS score of E4 V5 M6 with pupils being 3 millimeters bilaterally reactive to light. Pain score, child complained of having 5/10 with restriction of movement largely affecting the left elbow joint with obvious tenderness swelling noted. Now, at this point in time, IV cannula was placed, and the weight of the child was asked. Child was around 15 kg, so paracetamol dose in 15 milligram per kg was given via IV cannula, and the child was covered to prevent hypothermia. Now, there wasn't any significant adjuncts to primary survey, and in the sample history, patient had complained of pain over the left elbow. Now, event-wise, just so happened that the patient was playing outside when he fell on an outstretched left arm, causing hyperextension of the left elbow. Following this, the child complained of severe pain and was rushed to the hospital by the mother within 40 minutes of this event. Now, examination-wise, the local examination-wise, patient inspection, patient had obvious swelling and deformity more over the posterior aspect surrounding the left elbow, and DCAP BTLS was ruled out. That stands for deformity. C for any contusions, any abrasions were looked for, and punctures and penetrations. B stands for burns, and tenderness.
It was there. Tenderness was there. Deformity was there. Tenderness was there. Then swelling was there. So these three things were there. So, sir.
So apart from this local examination, we checked on for any other associated accompanying fractures, because most of the time when children have an outstretched arm injury, they are more often than not, they come with associated either wrist injury or a forearm injury.
Okay.
So this child had an isolated just injury involving left elbow.
Okay.
And our next aim was to identify any neurovascular compromise. So in this, the child's hand was relatively colder than the left arm, and radial and brachial artery were feeble in comparison to the right radial and brachial artery. So this was evident that the patient had a neurovascular compromise. So we had attached a pulse oximeter to the child's digits to see for any distal saturation, and that was around 93 to 94%. But the capillary refill time was around 4 seconds.
On the affected side?
On the affected side.
Other side?
Less than 3 seconds.
Less than 3 seconds. So there is significant vascular compromise. So except the palpation itself, we have found out that radial artery is feeble, and the brachial artery also you are having difficulty in palpation.
Discoloration of the main band. Circulation may be cyanotic or and then compare the pulse oximeter with the normal other side also, whether there is any difference. You told about the one side affected side, and you can compare it. Okay. Good night.
So apart from this, the child's arm was immobilized with a splint in order to prevent further manipulation, because any further manipulation can further worsen the neurovascular compromise. Now, in children, most common fracture would be a supracondylar fracture, and out of 60% of the fracture, it is supracondylar fracture, and out of this 60%, 70% will be hyperextended, 70% will be in due to a fall on an outstretched hand, and out of this 95% will be in extension types. So now, because of this, frequent assessment of neurovascular compromise has to be checked either before immobilization or any manipulation, or if the patient has to be shifted for x-rays, any manipulation done, we'll have to frequently check for any neurovascular compromise. And this is what we found. Now, because of this, looked like the patient had a severe grade of fracture. So this would require a surgical intervention for the fixation of this fracture.
So now you have confirmed that it is a supracondyle fracture. How will you confirm? Clinically, you have seen some deformity. You have asked for an X-ray. So what all views of X-ray that standard you need for an elbow injury?
One would be generally when a joint is involved, sir, ideally a joint above and a joint below X-rays have to be taken.
Okay.
Now an AP view and a lateral view will be taken in order to see for the joint of the distal end of the humerus with the condyles and the.
So ideally here you wanted an AP view and a lateral view. These are the two views that you need to ask in for. So in AP view and lateral view, what are the landmarks that you need to examine? Because here it is a clear-cut deformity. So there is no confusion. So sometimes the child will come with a pain, with like the similar history, with history of pain, and when you clinically examine, there is no deformity. But you have to look in for subtle signs in your X-ray to find out whether we have seeing an occult fracture. So what are the important things that you need to look in for an X-ray?
So
elbow X-ray.
For an alignment of the elbow joint, there will be two important lines. One would be an anterior humeral line, which when a patient is asked to the lateral aspect or medial aspect of the humerus, anterior line.
You have to ask for first a lateral X-ray. You have to take the lateral X-ray and you have to draw a line from the anterior aspect of the humerus, and it should pass on to the capitulum. Where should be cutting that line? Where should we be cutting?
1/3 of the
outer 1/3 of the capitulum it should be cutting. Okay, that is the first line. So that is the anterior humeral line. Then what else you have?
Then you have the radiocapitular line.
Radiocapitular line
divides the it extends from the radius and then it divides the capitulum into two exact halves.
Okay.
So this would be the two lines that would be used to check for the alignments.
Okay. So the most important thing in an X-ray that you have to look in for, because in a child 6 years.
6 years.
Next thing will be to understand the ossification centers. So what is the ossification center for the elbow joint?
So in order, there's a mnemonic for it, sir. It goes by CRETO, where C stands for capitulum. It comes at around 1 year. R is for radius, comes at 3 years. I is for internal epicondyle or medial epicondyle, comes at 5 years of age. T stands for trochlea, that comes at 7 years of age. O is for olecranon process for 9 years of age, and E is for epicondyle at 11 years of age.
So you have to understand that this child is 6 years. So there will be some ossification centers still not fused. So you should not confuse it for the fracture. So other thing that what you can do when you have a doubt, you can compare with the other limb, because right side the child is having pain, you can compare with a left sided X-ray. That is the one thing. But if you know regarding the ossification center like CRITOE 1357 911, and by 13 years of age all the ossification centers should be fused. So that is one injury. The most common one of the fall of outstretched hand and hyperextension injury is here supracondylar fracture. So the next one will be, what is the other most common elbow injury?
Pulled elbow.
Pulled elbow. So that is the other most common injury. Again, your X-ray, what will be the X-ray finding?
It will be like dislocation of the proximal end of the radius. That.
So what you have to do? So how will you reduce?
We'll ask the. Can be done. And then you.
Supination flexion or hyperextension. So you can, two maneuvers are there, so you can get back the pulled elbow. So understand that in a child, the most important two injuries that you can have, supracondylar fracture, here it is very clear, you are able to see a deformity, but never miss. So you have to understand the normal anatomical landmarks, and what are these two lines are very important. And what is the fat pad sign?
So there is generally in occult fracture, posterior fat pad is not to be seen. But if at all in the, it usually denotes a effusion, and if at all you see a fat pad in the posterior aspect of the humerus, it signifies a occult fracture.
So that is again one thing that you need to understand. So these are the most important things that you need to look in for the X-ray. So here there is no confusion, that you are clearly seeing, but rest of the time you have to look for this alignment. Okay, now what was the type of fracture? How will you classify it? Supracondylar fracture.
Supracondylar fractures is broadly classified by Gartland's fracture. This patient fell into the category 3. Basically, type 1 is minimally displaced or not displaced, that is less than 2 millimeters, with the anterior and the posterior periosteum to be intact. Now, in the second type 2, it will be displaced, that will be more than 2 millimeters, but the posterior periosteum will be intact, but the anterior humeral line will be displaced, the periosteum. And third, both posterior and anterior humeral lines are distorted along with displaced fracture.
And finally, we can have an open one because open fracture, but that is very rare. Usually, supracondylar, these are the three closed fractures that what will happen. Suppose you are going to do some manipulation because you are going to apply a slab for this child, because definitely this child need to take in for a fixation. Before that, you need to do some manipulation. So, how will you plan this manipulation?
So, one, consent from the patient's bystander, child's bystander has to be taken, sir, and the entire procedure has to be explained along with the complications of sedation. Now, along with this, we will then move on to procedural sedation, wherein the idea is to calm the child down and reduce the patient's pain. So, basically, sedation and analgesia would be two things in procedural sedation. So, with this, we can either use ketamine, and usually the dose is 1 to 2 milligram per kg, but for IV dose and for pediatrics, it will become half to 1/3, so that will be 0.25 to 0.5 milligram per kg dose we use for ketamine, and otherwise we can use a combination of midas and fentanyl.
The most important thing before giving any sedative drugs or anything, see, examine the systems of the patient. One is he may be having upper respiratory infection, he may be having lung infection, he may be a cardiac murmur, he being a child. So try to evaluate just to keep the strength and essential thing, auscultate, and then see this, because most of the drugs suddenly may produce bronchospasm or airway obstruction. Secretions may be increased. What is the effect of ketamine on respiratory passage? Increasing bronchuria. So we have to examine the basic cardiovascular and respiratory system, including the upper respiratory system.
So, what was done for this child?
For this child, the arm was first protected with a splint, taken for an X-ray, wherein X-ray was taken in order to confirm our supracondylar fracture and to classify this patient's injury as type 3, because the patient had neurovascular compromise, and type 3 is notoriously known to involve neurovascular component too. After this, the child orthopedic consultation was placed for an immediate intervention, and surgery was planned right away. And while the patient was getting shifted to the OT, we had to further mobilize it with a back slab.
Mobilize it with a back slab. So, where are which all conditions like you will definitely this child needed to be taken to the theatre, or you need to have a reduction plan?
One, if the injury is an open injury, so with an obvious neurovascular compromise, or if the child's basically the pulselessness is another indication, or if the child presents with acute compartment syndrome, with any neurovascular compromise with acute compartment
Basically,
syndrome.
it is very clear-cut, straightforward, neurovascular compromise, and you have an open. So, definitely you need to take it. So, whether open or closed, what was done for this child?
This patient was, he underwent open reduction with K-wire fixation procedures for fixation of his supracondylar.
What are the immediate and post complications? Late complications.
So, for immediate complication, acute compartment syndrome would be a major complication that we need to keep in mind, because this patient can present within 30 minutes to 1 hour of injury, and obvious signs would be pain out of proportion to the injury, or the patient will complain of paresthesia, and passive stretching would cause tremendous amount of pain. So, apart from this, there can be obvious neurovascular compromise, and depending upon the mechanism of injury, nerves can be involved. Like, for example, if it is a posterior lateral injury, like displacement of the distal fracture, then median nerve, most importantly anterior interosseous nerve, will be involved. So, at that point in time, in order to check, we'll have to ask the child to do an OK sign. A weak OK sign will depict an anterior interosseous nerve involvement. If it's a posterior medial displacement of the fracture, then radial nerve will be involved, where again it will be a high injury or a low injury.
Low injury.
Wrist drop will
Wrist
be
drop
seen,
will
an
be.
extension of the
Where
wrist.
you will see the wrist drop?
The
Where you will see the wrist drop, whether it's in the high or this thing.
A wrist drop will be at the higher end, it will have a wrist drop.
drop.
And then this would be majorly for the extension type. But if at all in rare cases where there is a flexion type of supracondylar fracture, then ulnar nerve will be involved, which will involve the lateral medial 1/3 of the hand. But generally when anterior interosseous nerve is involved, so patient will complain of first pain followed by weakness. Sensory involvement is rare in anterior interosseous.
So the most important message that you need to look in for is the neurovascular, and depending upon the nerve involved, you have to do the assessment. So median nerve is very notorious to have, and ulnar nerve also there is a possibility. Then vascular structures.
And vascular structures, basically it will be brachial artery because it will be running over the brachialis muscle, and brachial artery will have lot of collaterals around the elbow joint. So complete ischemia is unlikely if because of this collateral, and after that it will split into radial artery and ulnar artery.
Okay.
So this would be the major artery involved during supracondylar fractures.
Other complications?
The delayed complications would be a cubitus varus deformity. A normal carrying angle would range from 5 to 15. In females, mostly 14 degrees away from the body. And for males, it will be 11 degrees away from the body. Now, in Gunstock deformity of cubitus varus will be excessive carrying angle. So, it's called as the Gunstock deformity.
Ideally, when you do not treat, that will happen. But once you are done doing the fixation, that cubitus varus and Gunstock deformity can be avoided.
The second complication would be a Volkmann's contracture, which can be tackled with the Volkmann's splint. Now the thing in this is there will be a fixed flexion of the elbow with fixed flexion of the wrist. And extension of the interpharyngeal joints.
So these are all complications when you don't treat your properly the supracondylar. Occult supracondylar fracture missed and leading on to a neurovascular injury will lead on all to this. So the key message here will be any pediatric fractures around the elbow joint should definitely get in the X-ray. Even if you are not seeing any external injuries or any external deformity, definitely get an X-ray, and you need to have a proper evaluation with the ossification center, understanding the ossification center and drawing all the important lines and looking for the fat pad sign. If you have doubt, compare it with the other limb. And any point of time, if you have any doubt, get your expert opinion, because getting an orthopedician involved and do an expert opinion. And always keep in the mind the most common injury will be pulled elbow, which can be easily reduced. By getting an X-ray, you can know, and we can easily reduce by your simple maneuvers. Anything else, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.